All right, I think the time feels right to start talking. Sound good? All right, woo, good. Well, my name is Kayla Romberger, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Matfield Green this afternoon for the 9th annual Fall Gathering of the Tallgrass Artist Residency. There are many special people that go into making this day what it is, and I'm going to introduce some of them in just a minute, but I also want to introduce myself first. I'm the lead administrator of the Tallgrass Artist Residency, and I work with Derek Ham, who is the on-site manager, along with his family, Catherine and Felix, who live here in Matfield Green. We have a good partnership here where I don't meddle in their affairs because I live an hour and a half north in Manhattan, but I can send the emails and do the coordinating and the communicating. And Derek and Catherine are wonderful at being here and being hosts and welcoming artists when they come. But Derek also takes the lead in curating this show today as well. So I want to give a big round of applause to Derek and the artists that are participating in the show today. Gotta remember to turn all the switches on to make things work. But don't worry, speakers. The switches are turned on now. Speakers, switches. All right. Quick summary for those of you who aren't familiar with the Tallgrass program. The residency is a program of the Kansas Arts Commission that invites about 10 artists each a year to Matfield Green for 10 nights at a time. These residencies happen usually one at a time and offer visiting artists the gift of time and space immersed in the Tallgrass Prairie ecoregion among a remarkable community of folks here in Matfield Green. We have an open application process each year, and those applications are open right now for 2025 for anyone who's interested. And residents are selected by a jury that changes each year. Instead of asking applicants for what they intend to make during a residency, we ask them how they would most like to spend their time while in residence in this place. Residents are asked to give one public program during their stay, but we don't ask for any new work or responses until really this point in the year when all the residents have a chance to come back to Matfield Green together and share out about their experiences. So I do hope that you all had a chance to spend at least a little time with some of the work in this room, and it will be open for the rest of the day. And we'll be hearing in this next portion of the day from many of the artists to give a little more context about the work in this room. I do want to say that there were a few artists who weren't able to join us today, but some of them do have work in the space. Filmmaker Avery Israel has a recorded table reading of a short film that she's producing about a family of Black homesteaders on the Kansas plains. And Poppy Delta Dawn has a beautiful weaving basket here on display as well. So please do check out that work and spend some time with it. Yes, so the Tallgrass Residency is a unique program in a number of ways. But a lot of what makes this program special are the really amazing partners that we have. One thing that's unique is that the residency does not own property. There is not one physical location that is the Tallgrass residency. Instead, we work with local and regional partners who have physical spaces for artist lodging and for programming. And through this model, the program has actually put over $100,000 back into the local economy, and that's something that I'm very proud of. I do want to invite a couple of our local partners to the stage here in a minute and give them a chance to tell you a little bit about the work that they do. But as they make their way to the stage, I do want to give a shout out to all the folks on this screen. We are funded, and we are a program of the Kansas Arts Commission, which is also funded by the National Endowment for the Arts. We are in the School for Rural Culture and Creativity, and we will hear from them about their work in a minute. Artists stay at Matfield Station, which if you came from the north, you would have passed on 177. That is an Airbnb guest house that is open year-round, so if you like what you see, you too can come back and stay. Matfield Green Works is another great community partner who we'll hear from in just a moment as well. The Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve is really supportive of our programming, and the rangers there are very open to meeting with residents to share resources and research with them, so that's really exciting. And then I also want to give a big shout out to Kelly Wirtz, who lives here locally, is a fantastic musician, and helps with the sound every year. That is like a huge piece and a huge pain to someone like me who doesn't know how to do any of that, so I'm really, really grateful that Kelly is here and willing to help us out. And then Adam Akers is another Matfield connection, Tia's brother, who rents out audiovisual equipment professionally, but is very kind in working with us to provide things like this screen and the sound system. So those are just a few examples of folks who have just generously leaned in ways that they can to make this day possible, and we're very thankful. Let's give everyone I do want to hand the mic over to Christy Reinhardt, who's the president of the board for Matfield Green Works.
I'm Christy Reinhardt, and I'm the new board chair for Matfield Green Works. So we've been around for a little over 10 years in various different iterations. And our mission is to connect people with the earth and each other. And this is through various ways. This is through music events, programs, and our most recently is projects. When you came in, you probably came past our new project, The Green, which is right up there on the highway. So from Council Grove down to Cassidy is the Flint Hills Scenic Byway. There's about 143 scenic byways in the whole country. We're one of the top 10 scenic byways in the country. It's about 43 miles, absolutely stunningly beautiful, no place to be. There was no readily available, all the time handicapped, accessible bathroom. And this, if you're gonna connect with the Flint Hills and connect with each other, you need to think about the things people need in order to experience and visit the area. And one of those is toilets. The other thing we have is water. We also have brand new, going to be installed to support our gravel bike riders, a bike repair stand and a bike wash stand. We're going to have beautiful landscaping incorporating native plants. This has been a real collaborative work. Our project manager is right there, Bill, and he's also the architect. But it's also really putting the whole thing together has been an effort of the board. We're a plucky band of volunteers. There's about 8 of us. Most of us live in Matfield. Derek Ham is one of them. But we also have some that live out of state or one of Wichita that really, really love the Flint Hills. It touches them, and they want to be part of this. So if you get a chance, my son, Adrian, has recently moved from Alaska to live here. He's the newest resident of Matfield Green, and he is now maintaining the park and making that grass is his baby. So I would like for you to go and admire Adrian's grass. And also, if you get a chance to go across the street to the bank, which is our next project. We have 2 pieces of property. One of them we're getting ready to do the ribbon cutting on, and that's the green. That is going to be on November 9th. We're gonna have a little celebration. If you happen to be around, please come. That would be fantastic. We're going to have a picnic shelter. We envision that area as being a place where people in the community can meet, people can meet up, we can exchange fruits and vegetables, we can have birthday parties, kids in town can come and do messy art projects nobody wants to do at home. We see that kind of use. Across the street, we see this bank turning back into a visitor center, an artist and community space. And we're doing this on the cheap. We don't have a big grant for saving the bank. What we have is, as we mentioned, people who love Matfield, who love the work that happens here and the magic that happens in Matfield Green and want to donate either time or actual real cash to help us with the bank. Our next project is trying to put a roof on that. If you go in there, you'll notice it probably needs a new roof. There's wet spots in the floor and there's ceiling tile coming down. So we want to stabilize the building and then kind of let it tell us what it wants to be. We hope it's telling us it doesn't want to be a pile of rubble, but it does want to be used and a useful part of our community again. It's the last remaining commercial building in town, and so that's us. If you feel so moved to be part of this project, whether it's through ideas, enthusiasm, or as I mentioned, real cash money, we are involved with the Emporia Community Foundation Match Day. If you go to our website or you go to the Emporia Community Foundation website, you can see information on how to do that. But what this means is that the Emporia Community Foundation has put together a bunch of big donors that your donation gets matched with their money, and it extends the amount of money of the donation based on the amount of money that we raise. It's a weird math thing. You don't need to know math to know that what this means is that this is a good time to do this. Match Day is November 18th. If you write us out, the check has to be made out to Emporia Community Foundation anytime between now and the 19th. You can also go online. I know this is a lot of numbers, this is a lot of stuff, but you can find information on our website. And we will probably be sending a lot of you emails, so don't delete us right away. Anyhow, thank you very much for giving me the time to talk to you, and Kelly.
Forgive me, Christy, if you said this, but Matfield Green Works organized the community open studios this morning with the town. So I'm really appreciative of that because it gets people to explore and move around and visit and get to know the place. So thank you. Next, I want to invite up Matt and Ortia for the School for Rural Culture and Creativity.
Thanks, Kelly. I thought I was getting over a cold this week and lost my voice last night, this morning, so I'll try to keep this even shorter than usual. But it's just great to see the residents come back, and it's always lovely to see residents from past years back again. And just want to thank all of you for being by proxy and more intimately a part of our community and just helping us really think about what it means to be community here and to to take care of our place and to respect our place and to continue to really understand what it is to have a little community out here on the prairie and to work towards that neighborly work of building community with each other and respecting the ecology of place here. So thanks to have you here, and thanks to Kelly for all the work of this residency. This is our 6th year, more or less. There was 2 in 1 for COVID there, but of hosting this event for the residency here at the school. And so every year I think something changes here, hopefully for the best. So I just want to briefly point out a couple of the changes that we've made in the past year. Hopefully one of the changes is actually not what you're seeing, what you're hearing. So we got these audio panels, these acoustical panels put up this past winter. Thanks for a grant from the Canese Art Commission, and special thanks to Don and Michelle Wolf. Michelle Wolf donated the quilts that are now on the hallway, which we used as an in-kind matching donation to help get the panels here. And they make a pretty big difference. It was really, really quite echoey in here before. So maybe you could even hear me without my voice here, I don't know. Also, if you look at the last classroom, we have some brand new library shelving. A local carpenter did that and repurposed some of the trim boards into molding and so on. So we're looking forward to expanding and working on our library. And then a last, something that you won't see in the building, but we're really honored to be a part of an organizing partner organization with a group called Midway, which is a Midwestern Regional Arts Coalition. I see Kimmy Katada here from Charlotte Street, who's one of the organizing partners in that group. So it's a little bit humbling, honestly, to think that we're being recognized as like a real arts organization with operating with some larger and much more seasoned organizations that we can learn a lot from. So that's been kind of a whirlwind already, but exciting. We'll be going to a summit at Charlotte Street in November with that. So lots to learn and lots of fun connections to make there. Lastly, I just want to explain a little bit about the meal that we'll be having later. This has become kind of a tradition of doing a local foods chili supper, and I want to thank especially Jane Koger, who's a rancher in this area, whose ranching practices are really incredible. What she does to preserve habitats of prairie chickens and jackrabbits and different, and certainly native flora on her ranch. She's donated the grass-finished beef for the chili, some of the tomatoes, all the peppers, all the onions, all the garlic and oreganoes coming out of local gardens here from the chili, all the salad and the pears that we'll have is all coming from local produce. So, and thanks to those of you who volunteered and helped putting that all together this week. So that is a free will donation. This evening we're asking $15 as a minimum donation. If you want to give more, of course, we appreciate that. We do, we don't have any paid staff. We have a lot of renovations that we're continuing to work on, like heating and cooling for the building, which is one of these things that we keep chasing. I think we're getting close to there. We've got some smaller grants and contributions, so working towards getting this space to where it's not quite as seasonal. And if you want to do that, you can become one of our rural scholars. You get a free print. There's information about that out in the hallway. If you give $200, you get a free print, and you will be one of our rural scholars. And some of our current and past residents have done that, so much appreciated to that. I think that is about it. So thanks. It's wonderful to see you all here. Yeah.
Well, if you'll humor me, I have just a couple more remarks here before we get the presentations rolling. But I just wanted to say that when this event comes around every year, it seems to create so many good excuses to pause and reflect on the state of things. We're in the middle end of fall harvest season, and we're reaping the fruits of labors from this year. We're usually on the cusp of a transition to more crisp and chilly fall weather. Friends and neighbors have shown up in a really big way to make the events of this day happen. There's a lot to celebrate today, and it feels big. But in many ways, Matfield Green is also characterized by its smallness. 49 residents, the last I heard. So here we are, people gathered in one school gymnasium in rural Kansas, in a county that doesn't have a grocery store, besides Dollar General. What's the significance of what we're doing here today? According to the Geneva Academy's website, they're currently monitoring at least 110 armed conflicts worldwide. Many of these we don't see in the news, but what we do see is devastating. More than any other time in history, I think we can witness the pain of people on the other side of the globe directly from the palms of our hands. We can see in real time someone's livelihood being consumed by floodwaters. Regardless of how the talking heads choose to analyze and spin narratives around these events, what remains powerful, I think, is the direct connection to those individual stories of real people. I also think it's kind of hard to be a mindful human in the world today with overwhelming access to so many of these stories, and when so many of them involve real loss and heartache. I do also want to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the ancestral homelands of the Osage, Sioux, and Kickapoo peoples, and that the stories of this place we're adding to today in many ways start with the dispossession of land. But I think I'm saying all this here because I realize these stories don't flow one way. We receive news and stories, but we also create them. If we have the ability to learn about someone's community on the other side of the world, then chances are they also have the ability to learn about ours. I believe that small movements can lead to big changes, and that small communities can model more sustainable ways of living and problem solving. Whether we're revisiting history of family legacies in light of our own experiences, like Avery Israel, Canese Jarboe, and Colleen Thurston, delving into the relationships between self and place, like David Wayne Reed, Poppy Delta Dawn, Kayla Romberger, and Madeline Cass, or creating creative new visions for the future, like Christopher Williams and Veronica and Salinas. I believe that this is important work and that what we're doing here today matters. So thank you for being here and being a part of it. And with that bittersweet note, I'm going to invite our artists to come up. I think I had another slide there. These were all of our artists from this year and the dates that they came out and where they're from. Artists, I have slides like this in between each of your presentations. There's a clicker up here, so when you're done, you can just advance to the next slide, and the next presenter's name will be right there. Good. All right, thank you so much. Madeline Cass.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kelly, for such a nice introduction. I feel kind of emotional afterwards, honestly. Well, I'm Madeline Cass, obviously. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. Born and raised in Nebraska, kept trying to leave for a long time and just kept getting sucked back to the Midwest, which after a few years being back, I'm now really grateful for. It's where my whole family is, and it's where I feel most rooted. So I'm primarily a photographer, but I sort of don't like that word. I prefer to just be an artist because I don't like sort of being limited to boxes. So sort of a photo-based artist who likes also writing and painting, and books are the thing that I love so much as a format. So my work is over there. It's the little book on the pedestal with the framed print above it. So I hope you get a chance to look at it before you leave. I was here in April, obviously, so I was the first one this year, and I think it's earlier than we've had people out before because I expressed an interest in prescribed burns, and I was really grateful that Kelly and everyone figured out how to accommodate my interest, just knowing that there would probably be a higher likelihood of safe burns happening at that time that I could hopefully find myself involved with, which I did, and it was amazing. And I honestly don't even remember like how many slides I had, so we'll see how all this goes. So this, that book over there and my work that I've been working towards while I was here is called Wildfire Sun, which I realize wildfires and prescribed burns are obviously not the same thing, but they meld together in this work. Obviously we have prescribed burning in Nebraska as well, so it's something I've been involved with in the past. But from what it seems to me, in this region of Kansas at least particularly, the burning seems like more vast and also somehow like a larger part of the culture. And I don't know if that's just because there's like more ranching here, whereas Nebraska is more monoculture ag. I should probably learn more about why that difference is, but it seems like the burns that I've been on in Nebraska are much smaller than the ones that are happening here. So this was just an incredible opportunity to be able to be around some bigger burns. I just want to say particularly thanks to Dawn for introducing me to Jane and for Jane accommodating me to be able to participate in a burn on her land because it was really an amazing day. She also took me out two different mornings to see the prairie chickens, which was on my bucket list for a long time. And as like an amateur ornithologist, it was an amazing experience. So I'm really grateful to have befriended Jane, hopefully. So this was on her land. So this body of work was born from relentlessly hot summers that were intensified by the presence of ever-raging wildfires, which I think is going to be something that we all find to be more common than what we've been used to in the past, of course. These images were made, it's so hard to see them in the daylight, but please just look at the book, because they're much more like detailed than this. But these images were made all over the country: New Mexico, California, Nebraska, Kansas, Oregon, and through a number of years. This work is a collage and a personal map through my states of being, a reflection on my reckoning with being alive in the Anthropocene, which I think is, again, something that we're all going to have to figure out how to reckon with in our own way and in our own time at some point in our lives, if you're not already, unfortunately. The process of creating this book was a personal meditation, examining my own closeness to nature. The distance between body, landscape, and nature begins to collapse. So here's a loose summary sort of poem artist statement that I wrote about the work. A mirage, sweltering the heat. Fire itself nowhere to be seen, a reminder of how we are all connected. What does it mean to be a wildfire sun? Beautiful, entrancing, terrifying, all at once. Shouldn't look, but can't stop looking. So in these slides, I'm going to share a selection of images that mostly pertain to what I was doing in Matfield with the burns, and also a few other images, but for the most part I'm going to leave you, again, with the book, and just, it's better to experience it as a whole because of the writing that accompanies the images and also the sequencing between the images. There's a lot of thought that goes into like how all of that flows, so this is just like such a small selection. But, so I've never thought of myself as being a pyromaniac, but I think it might seem like I am one from the level of obsessiveness with fire that I've had in the course of making this work. I've had the great pleasure of being able to participate in a handful of burns, like I said, and also to be near some real wildfires. I feel wonder every time that I'm near fire because of some mixture of danger and beauty present that makes you feel really present in that moment. In a way that I suspect is somewhat primitive, and I think these days seems like a feeling that's more fleeting and rare to find ourselves with. Additionally, I think there's a metaphor rather than a literal burning that I am trying to untangle in this work. Heat and lust, a longing to connect with nature in a way that is personal and emotional and increasingly endangered. I tried my hardest to think of myself as a part of something larger. I consider myself to be an ecosexual. I feel the most myself when my mind and body are embedded in nature. A story from Jane Goodall that I heard recently really stuck with me, does a great job of speaking to the heart of how I feel about this. She talks about how she found herself one day in a forest and a fly landed on her, and it was like beautifully iridescent, and she tried so hard not to name it. She tried to like remove herself from calling it a fly. Like she just wanted to like see it as another creature and as another being, and also to like see herself as just something just as small as that fly. And it was like so much about not calling it a fly and not limiting it to that, just admiring it for its beauty. And she was like looking closely and in the forest, like alone for hours. And even just like the thought of like being in solitude in that way, I think is also so endangered. Like she probably didn't have a phone. She, you know, like it was so lovely the way that she told it. I think she's just such an amazing, like wise elder that we still have somehow. So anyway, I think humanity would be better off overall if we decentered ourselves more in this way, of course. And as a person who's curious about the world and an admirer of science, I think that it's important actually to step back and ask ourselves about the framework that we take for granted in how we name and teach and learn about the natural world. I'm compelled to explore nature in a way that is very personal and emotional and with a childlike openness rather than so constantly analytical, not naming but perhaps sensing, unfiltered, to understand the world by touching nature with different parts of my body and to see what it's saying back and then recording that experience. And on top of that, like I'm still a nerd and a researcher and a student and like love learning and like love knowing all kinds of things. So like contending with those two different mindsets, it can be a challenge, but I think it's one that I'll always be like reckoning with and trying to figure out. And so with all of that, I would just like to read you one poem from the book, and that's all I have for you, so bear with me here. It's a picture, my poems are in the book handwritten, and I fully realize that my handwriting is slightly difficult to read. I'm not making it difficult on purpose, but I find that it like feels more personal that way. So anyway, demanding more from the sunset, I eat the unknown, Eucharist on tongue, swells and envelops me like touching velvet or swimming with pockets of rocks, swallowing echoes and unanswerable questions. I didn't want to be an answer, a noise, a clamor. Dissolved into a vibrating pond, somewhat shyly, humming dragonflies. Flowers bend, gangly knees, like a first love's hair. The intimacy they granted you, no veil, like the flow from sun into chlorophyll. Body ageless in cold orbs, submerged and floating. By the grace of my mother's womb, a cathedral between known and unknown. Wonder if I was born here, now that I've lost my name. What does it mean to be this backwards? A cracked and empty vessel, seeking gold to fill me in. Porous, I am listening. Here's a couple more slides that I forgot to get to, sorry. Here's a nighttime one from Matfield, which was maybe the most excited that I was outside of the prairie chickens while I was here, because I really wanted to see a bird happening at night. And so I'm so glad that I caught one. And it was right after I left dinner with Derek at Derek's house, so that was a good night. Does anyone have any questions or anything before I hop off? Cool. Thanks for bearing with me. Sorry I forgot to click through the slides. Colleen.
Okay. I'll work this. Here we go. All right. Hello, Suchi Foyer, Colleen Thurston. Hello. My name is Colleen Thurston. I am a filmmaker and I am a curator, a film curator, a lot of different things. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and which is like the southernmost tip of the tallgrass prairie ecoregion, as far as I understand. My mom's family is Choctaw and a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Our reservation is in the southeastern corner of Oklahoma. It's beautiful. If you've never been there, it's gorgeous. Please come. My dad's family is European American. He is a fourth generation railroad family. So my grandfather, his father before him, and then briefly my father as well, all worked for the Rock Island Railroad. And many of them, all of them passed through Kansas. At some point in time, my grandfather was born here and my father was born here as well in Liberal, Kansas. So it felt very fitting that when I had an artist residency in Kansas, I should live next to a train. I could feel it in my blood. I mentioned I'm from Oklahoma. Oklahoma comes from the Choctaw words. It's my people's language, meaning red people. So it's literally the land of the red people. And there's a lot of overlap between Oklahoma and Kansas, as I will talk a little bit about. My work really explores indigenous ways of being, my people's stories, and interconnectedness with land and water. So what did I do when I was here other than fall in love with the trains? I think it was my first or second night. I got to go to Wichita and give a talk and then work in progress screening at the Tallgrass Art Center. It was an incredible space. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. The Tallgrass Film Collective Association Society, forget what they call themselves, but it's a wonderful, wonderful ecosystem that supports filmmaking in the area. And I got to speak about my current work. This picture on the right is from a film that I worked on during my residency and that I've just finished up. It's called Drowned Land, and it deals with the displacement of people due to resource extraction and resource commodification on Indian land. That video in the back there is from my film, and what it is, I did not put any kind of artist statement with it, I should have, what I did is I projected my grandfather's 8mm films onto a dam in our reservation. And the reason I did that is because to get people thinking about the stories that are with the land beneath the water when we flood water like that, when we flood land to create lakes, when we build dams. My grandfather, on my mom's side, so he was Choctaw as well, was an engineer with the Corps of Engineers. So he actually worked to dam our lifeways, our waterways, and displaced a lot of people because of that. So my work, Drowned Land, really explores some of that history. So I worked on that while I was here. I worked on some other stuff too. I'm gonna stay on this slide for a second. So I did a lot of filming while I was here in and around the prairie and in the larger region. I really explored the ecosystem, connecting with the prairie and these concepts of regeneration and these concepts of removal and dispossession. These are, I love these field journals. I am so grateful for these field journals. I think I bought 3 of them. I love the format, they're gorgeous, they have amazing writing.
And I was enthralled with them while I was here. So I would sit on my mat out in the prairie and just read. And then I also was re-reading, I was re-listening to Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, which some of you might be familiar with, that deals with a lot of these concepts of regeneration, rematriation, and reciprocity. So that was also just lovely. I'm just walking through the prairie and like looking at insects and listening to her tell me stories. And these really impacted, really helped frame my work. The other thing that, when I'm thinking about removal and regeneration, one theme that really stuck out to me was this connection between transportation and removal and the settlement of the prairie and the subsequent degeneration of the prairie ecosystem. So, for example, I visited the Land Run Museum in Arkansas City to get an idea of narratives surrounding settlement. There's a picture up here of what is a land run. A land run refers to a historical event in which previously restricted land of the United States, it's a lovely euphemism for land that belonged and was stewarded by Native people, was open to homestead on a first arrival basis, unless you were Indian, right? There were 5 land runs which settled the Oklahoma Territory. The first in 1889 was the first land run into unassigned Oklahoma Territory. And so that people gathered in Arkansas City, and then they were able to rush over Indian Territory border, Oklahoma Territory, into and gain land. And they did so with, wagons, covered wagons, horses, a lot of the time. I will say that I have ancestors that did this as well, so this is very much ingrained in who I am. And so I'm just seeing these narratives of possession and these narratives of wagons. There's wagons everywhere. And wagon wheels is this kind of this became like a recurring motif of my time here, and it's like once you start looking for something, then you start seeing it everywhere. And I saw this kind of celebrated in this idea of like settling the prairie and taming the wilderness, and then of course this down here is an image of the train. So how do we bring people out here, right? The train. And I noticed the absence of indigenous narratives, right? Even in this statement, it does say at the bottom, the land run of 1891, settled land previously held by Iowa, Sac and Fox and Potawatomi reservations. But there's kind of this lack. I did visit the Kaw mission site in Council Grove, which was a boarding school for Native children, with the explicit intention of erasing their culture, their language, and their connection to the land. That was, it was unsettling, right, to visit there. So the Kaw, or Kansa, who gave their name to this place, were removed from this area, dispossessed of their land, and they're also now located in Oklahoma. So they were disconnected from their roles as stewards of the land, which of course enabled for degradation of the prairie. So settlers came in to settle the prairie for agricultural purposes, right? And then we have this vast unrooting of the prairie ecosystem by mainly European Americans. But I did not come here to bum you all out. I came here actually to talk about positive stuff, about regeneration. And I think I'm preaching to the choir here, because as we know, the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve is really a beacon of regeneration. And this is what made me smile every single day. While I was here, this place is really a model of what can happen throughout this continent. I don't need to really go into that because I believe that you all know all of that. So this exploration of ideas and things that I filmed while I was here focused on the possibilities of not just ecosystem regeneration, but also of a reconnection of stewardship with the prairie. prairie. I mean, I see how you all steward this place and how the National Park Service is stewarding the prairie, right? And I don't have an image, but I also visited the Aligawahu Memorial Site, which was established by the Kaw Nation outside of Council Grove. And this place really signifies the return of not only a sacred rock, sacred stone, but the return of stewardship and renewed relationships with ancestral places. This return of the Kansa people to the place which bears their name. Of course, we see that with the bison, right? The bison have become this symbol of regeneration, this symbol of hope. They were hunted, killed, genocided to almost near extinction, and now, of course, we can go have a relationship with them in the prairie. You can't see this right here, but this is my little wagon. I have a little wagon that I would tow with me out in the tall grass prairie and have like my snacks and my mat and my camera and everything. And I thought, how fitting that I should be using a wagon. So yeah, a few other things I want to mention quickly. I have no idea, I'm probably way over time. These ideas of regeneration were so integral to being here. When I first got here, I was texting Kelly and Derek like on my way because there were tornadoes coming through the area. And so I'm driving up like through like Tulsa to here, and like the tornadoes are like behind me and in front of me. And, you know, being people from this area, you just kind of like look at it, you're like, where are they? All right, good. But I got here and the tornadoes didn't hit here. So I sat out on the porch and watched storms all around. And I have about 13 minutes of just filming this like incredible lightning storm. And I just thought like, this is, I'm a gardener. I'm like, this is gonna be so good for the plants. And then when I left, on my last night I was here, I had an overlap with two other residents, one being David Wayne Reed, and on our last night here, we had a fire outside. We built a small bonfire outside of our residence over there, and I thought, isn't this perfect? I have water at the beginning, and then I have fire at the end, which are both like incredible forces of regeneration and of rebirth. I also was here over Mother's Day. I am a mother, and I planned my time here without thinking anything of it, and I said, I'm gonna be away from my child on Mother's Day. And I had an amazing community time here over at Diana's studio. We had a Mother's Day party. So again, these themes of birth and regeneration were just throughout time here, so I'm so grateful for that. Yako Key, thank you so much for being here. I forgot to mention very quickly, I'm sorry, I'm not being quick at all. This is a video, I don't know that it played, but it's like dung beetles. And I was like, the dung beetles are back, like, with the bison. And again, like they're like rolling a wheel, so I'm like this theme of like of wheels, and so I kind of reframed this like wheel motif in my mind as a cyclical and circular form. So while the settlement of the prairie came with degeneration and with destruction, now we're at a point in that circle, in that dung beetle wheel of regeneration. So that was really beautiful. Thank you so much to Kelly, to Derek, to the McBrides, to the School for Rural Culture and Creativity, to this incredible community of Matfield Green, to the Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve, to the non-human relatives who sustain this eco-region, and to all those who are working and have worked as stewards of this land. Yakuki.
Hi, I'm David Wayne Reed, and thank you, Colleen, for noting that moment with fire. It really felt like ceremony to enter into this space as she was exiting. That was a really special memory. That's the Tallgrass Prairie. Every time I see a bison, I feel like touched by an angel. I mean, just every single time. It's so incredible. I was out a couple weeks ago and I happened upon 60 head. It was just so incredible. Here, that's where I'm staying. That's where I stay. That's where I'm staying. Hit me up. Okay. So here at the Tallgrass Artist Residency, I found that it's about time. It's about making time. And I feel like I'm an old person now because all I talk about is how quickly time is passing and how I don't understand time. But here, I had time to settle into a new time frame. 10 days living on this endangered landscape of deeply rooted prairie and the wisdoms and the histories that it holds, and it tells you if you stand on it long enough. I arrived here in mid-May, the most excellent and benevolent time the prairie has to offer, in my opinion, and there's a deep welcoming feeling of the prairie that's palpable and immediate, almost upon arrival. I don't know if you guys felt that. I always feel it when I crest into Strong City. That's when I really feel it. I think it's because the roots are so deep and they reach up and they grab us and they hold us and kind of demand our attention. It's just me philosophizing. But this landscape is an epic poem that's always being written, always carrying those stories from before, from the time when it emerged from what was once the shale floor of a shallow sea. And in mid-May, the prairie floor is downy with pinstemming. Pinstemmon's like my favorite, it's so beautiful. And the butterfly weed, the prairie rose, the wild indigo. Out on the yonder of the McBride's place, there are horses that whinny and gallop on the horizon. It's just so fucking idyllic, right? I start off by reading some poetry in the rocking chair out front. Nice touch, love that. And I listen to the prairie's symphony of biodiversity, the buzzes and the whirs of the countless birds and the insects and that hummingbird that always startles me, but somehow the rattlesnakes don't. And the gentle breeze that claps the curtains in my place like an intermittent lazy metronome. And I rock back and forth, and my deep exhale lets me know that I'm welcomed here, and I'm settled. Oh yeah, there's that sexy wild indigo. So it is literally 20 steps from my back door to the 2 train tracks that cut through the prairie landscape. And I'm sitting out front when I hear it for this first time. That great thunder that magnifies and swells, and it's like, it's too sunny for this to be a tornado. And I run out back and I see this train approaching. And I've been told about this train. We've all been told about this train. You'll get used to it, they say, right? It is incessant. It happens all the GD time. And I get used to it after a while, but it's always slicing through this pastoral landscape. I remember one day it was all war equipment. Tanks, and cannons, and just, the industrial war complex. And it reminded me that even out here in the middle of such pastoral beauty, no one is immune from war. And it's just a reminder that this broken ground that was plowed asunder and it's just been extracted, exterminated, exploited, transported upon. And it's a reminder of our digging in, of laying claim, and of the audacity to pass over this landscape that we've destroyed. And it just reinforces and reminds me with each scrape and each flashing light of the goddamn train. But even still, I run out back and I greet it and I wave to it as if it's a parade, like it's gonna throw me gum. And its movement blocks the beautiful view of the prairie that sits just beyond the tracks, and I just catch little staccato glimpses of it, in the stop motion between the chain of cars before it finally passes and again exposes the deep and wide horizon. That train becomes my marker of time. It's like an alarm clock set at varying hours, always interrupting time and time again. But like me, the train is a time traveler. Oh yeah, I knew I had a slide there somewhere. Standing out in the tracks, right? Me and my big common sense. But like me, the train is a time traveler. It's chasing time as much as it's making up time. And it's not only my impulse, but it's also the human nature to try to capture time, to put a saddle on it, to tame it, to outrace it. and I try to understand it as much as it just completely unsettles me. I'm a writer, performer, and filmmaker, and my work is often time-based. I capture moments in photograph and in video, in journal, and in performance on the fleeting temporal stage. But I've come here to focus on my film Xylem, a poem-based experimental film about identity and legacy, positioning the tree as record keeper, as narrator, and as time machine. But out here on the prairie, the trees are loners. They're often found alone or at the margins, near fence lines, guarding rivers. And I kind of share that outsiderness with them. I understand. And like me, trees are writers, the record keepers, the time machines. The bark is the paper, the time is the ink. And like the time marked by xylem, as written in the ring of trees, I'm reminded that time is a circle. And it's not those neat lines and squares of our everyday capitalist calendars. It's a circle, and that is what I leave behind, and that is the reason why I always return. So just days before coming to the residency, on the night when we first saw the Aurora Borealis, and that was so cool back in May, I totaled my car in the early morning at John to go out and find it. In this wild, unexpected circumstance, I killed a deer. A deer just like jumped out in front of me. It was instant, thank God. But then, it was a Toyota Corolla, right? And I'm only telling you that because my insurance company then gave me an Audi. Like, so I come out here and I'm like this big effing high roller, out here, which is hilarious. I've never driven a car like that except for when I was a concierge, right? And it was the sleekest, fastest, most luxurious car I've ever driven. I even drove it out on this roads, which was danger, but anyway. I was here on the night of the flower moon, and I chased a train that night. I don't know if it was my ongoing relationship with the train and keeping me up, it kind of irritating me, it kind of becoming a timepiece of sorts, but I chased it one night. And I galloped ahead of the train, eating the lines in the road like they were cocaine, and in the closing loop of the day, I hit 130 miles an hour. I am so sorry. I am so sorry, Matfield residents. That's dangerous, and I do not condone that, and I am ashamed. But I did it, and I'm standing in my accountability. So I'm chasing this train, I'm also videotaping it. Anyway, I'm standing in my accountability. And I chase it back, and then I get back before it, and I park my car, I run up behind the Matfield station to get out, because every night, you gather for the sunset. This is the moment, this is how we mark time. We gather in ceremony to catch this gorgeous sunset every night. And I hike to the top of the hill and see it, and it's all its devout glory. And I took a deep breath and released myself before it descends. It's always so quick. Before that train that I chased comes hollering around the bend yonder, horns blaring, and I slow down enough to take my breath. I watch time circle, and I honor its spiral. Because what I found out, time is a circle. It's outside the box. It's a spiral. Out here, I'm reminded that time is at the turn of the seasons. It's in the parade of the wildflowers, from the pinskin to the wild indigo to the gay feather, which is my favorite girl. It's in the animal migrations, the sun's rising and setting, and the motions of the waters and the growing cycles and the constellations. I wanted to find out how we mark time. I invite you to check it out and write your thoughts on time on the typewriter over there. Take a hand out, I didn't make that clear, but those are all for you. And I remember that moment of standing in that open grassland and standing and staring into the sun, into its golden purple hue, that color that you can't quite describe. I call it golden purple. And for this moment, I move with time as it moves. And I look across the distance to the horizon, and in this deep time space, what I love most about these deep time spaces is that I'm reminded of my ultimate insignificance. And what a liberation that is. And it kind of takes me back full circle to the first time I came to this place, and I remember I went over to the bank, and there was a small little bumper sticker in the window and the window said, the sticker said, "Too small to fail." I don't have any tattoos, but I kind of want to get that tattooed because it's just such a mantra of it doesn't matter. And isn't that freeing? And that's what my time at Tallgrass reminded me of. Oh, there's that beautiful sunset that night when I chased the train. I'm glad I didn't wreck another car. Thank you so much for having me.
You probably saw that next slide, didn't you? We're going to take a short break, 10 minutes, and we'll be back here. All right, folks, I hate to cut off the conversation, but we have some more fabulous artists to hear from. So I'm going to call us all back to our chairs. See some more faces joining us now. That's great. I hope you appreciated the coffee too, because it's like a no-go taste. All right, well, we'll have another break a little later on in the afternoon, but for now, I want to welcome Kayla Romberger to the stage.
Hi everyone, thank you. Let's see, so I'm going to figure out, okay, I am going to sort of look at images with you all, and I ended up putting a lot of slides in my presentation and I did the math and it was 15 seconds per image, which is kind of wild, but probably will have moments where we go through a lot of images. So I'm actually an artist from Philadelphia, but I frequent Kansas City quite often now because my partner moved to Kansas 2 years ago. So I think my perspective on the residency in this space is sort of one of an outsider, and I've thought a lot about that, or maybe like a semi-resident. And I thought about when I was thinking about organizing the talk, this sort of background is that I mostly traffic in artist books. I make artist books, I teach around the artist book, and I also run a bookshop, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So I thought I'll organize this as parts of a book. We're thinking about how maybe a residency could also emulate a book, and books are organized in 3 sections. One of front matter, body matter, and end matter. So I thought maybe I'll give you a little bit of information about myself from before the residency and the front matter. The body matter being the residency, and the end matter being kind of after what I'm doing now with all the sort of artifacts of what I've learned and gathered in my time here. And then I'm also kind of setting up the diptych, which is how most books are set up. So all the front matter occurring prior to the core content of the book is that I run this bookshop called Ulysses in Philadelphia. It's mostly we sell just artist books or books in theory or theory, design. And it's just been run with a couple of friends, actually. We took a very humble garage and turned it into a space. And it really, there's a lot of echoes when I finally landed here, seeing this space here that we're in right now, that really resonated. And this, it's a local artist in Philadelphia who gave us the space, and we've been able to do a lot of things over the years. So we've been running it since 2015, and this is just an image where we hosted an independent publisher out of the Philippines and Rotterdam in New York, and did this really beautiful public program. So just a brief kind of moment to see what I've been up to. And this is a section of some of the books that we sell. We make a lot of tote bags, and we even made a book about publishing. And then we've moved a couple of times, and this is our current space. And this is the group that I've been doing the project with. And maybe there's some kind of glow up, or really in a lot of ways I think we just have grown up and gotten older. And it's been an interesting thing to sort of age through an independent project. But I think the main thing is that the thing that's sort of like grounded our project is that we are a group of friends doing it, and friendship has been kind of like the main sort of drive for the project. And this is a project we did. We recently got invited to go to Amsterdam and do a project about friendship in particular. And we sort of played off Philadelphia as being a Quaker space that has many sort of Quaker friend spaces within it. So that's all prior to it. In addition to that, I also teach, and we spend a lot of time next to printers, on the ground, organizing things, taking scrap paper, reprinting it. Here's some projects I've done with students. So the kind of lead up to my own residency is every semester, maybe mostly every fall, I've given my students an assignment where they have to take a ream of paper and print it. And a ream of paper is just 500 pages that come in that packet of paper, 500 pages of 8.5 by 11 paper. And I've given the assignment, and the students balk at it, and they actually are able to do it. And it's sort of loosely based on the Xerox book, which is this bottom image right here, which is this iconic book from 1972, organized by a curator named Seth Siegelob, who gave 7 artists 20 pages each to use the book as an exhibition space. So I thought a lot about doing that. I thought, okay, I landed in Kansas, maybe I give myself my own assignment. So that's what I ended up doing. So here we are at the Body Matter in Kansas. So, so 2 summers ago, my partner moved here, and I landed in the prairie, and I had to really kind of consider what the space was. And at one point, through a friend of a friend, actually Ksenia Gershon, who's here, her in-laws mentioned a space called Matfield Green, and she had mentioned that it's this wonderful it's an artist colony in rural Kansas, and at one point we started. My partner and I looked it up, and we decided to try to stay here, and we stayed at Matfield Station. And this is actually an image of the night sky. Life-changing. Sure enough, it was, because after we stayed in Matfield Station, I thought I have to apply to this residency. It's such a magical place, it's so still, and I applied and got in and was really thrilled. So fast forward, June, we landed in the residency, and I was very deathly afraid of ticks. So you can see where I started with my clothing for field work, which I was taping a pair of rubber boots. And by the end, it was shorts. I made some friends. Thank you, Philip. So, lots to talk about. So, some of it was, I think when I thought about how do I give myself my own assignment of a sort of encyclopedic book, or how to throw tons and tons of content into publication format, a lot of it for me was thinking about a really wide search. And the way that I end up navigating images, being a product of our time, is often mediated. And the book becomes a perfect container. So the book is like a containment of some sort of larger networked idea around how we think about spaces, or any idea. So I kind of set out to think about the prairie in every way that I could. So I landed here with just an iPhone, a film camera, a Brother printer, and a lot of Google searching. And actually I was doing mostly Wiki Commons searching. So some of the images that I started to gather around making a prairie book ended up being photographs that I took myself, photographs that I found and re-photographed or scanned. It's often a mix. Photographs from the walks on the residency, archival images, and deep wiki commons searches that kind of ended up creating some sort of algorithmically evoked idea about what prairie could mean. And those searches ended up being like literally Kansas, food, or Kansas, 1980. And I thought, how do I look at this space from a sort of external and broader lens? In the interim, I did a workshop, and we made zines together. And when we did our zine workshop, actually, I brought in a lot of the images that I was searching for in printing. And so it was really wonderful to have sort of like a parallel experience of make zines with you all, and then kind of go back to my own space and continue to work that way. So as I started to set the book up in InDesign, a lot of it became about how two images speak together, and then how you kind of create a larger narrative across this book. And I really had this idea, I wanted to hold it in hand and it to be a certain width in the spine. So actually, this one's totally blank. So I started with the shape, and then the book kind of came together afterward. So the book is right over there, and you can all hold it in hand, and I would say it's still a work in progress. But a lot of printing and seeing how things work together, seeing the way two images create a new narrative. And maybe the other thing that all of my searching and sort of broad reach landed me in some sort of acknowledgement that you can search for the prairie, but you land in politics. So in a sort of and then I also thought about sort of integrating voices from outside the region. So it's like the region and beyond. How some of the thinking about prairie can also extend into the digital world. Poems from Dwayne Harjo, other images, archival books about ranching, and even sort of anecdotes that I learned along the way. So one of the first nights here, Derek had us over for dinner and mentioned that Alice Waters actually had some influence on this pizza oven that was in his house. And I thought about, and that Alice Waters was someone who was a real exponent for Wes Jackson, who created the perennial wheat that's a big part of the Salina agriculture movement here. So those are all these sort of integrated stories that became part of how I was sort of envisioning or imagining what the space was in one sort of contained book. So this is actually a screen capture of Alice Waters' Instagram, where she does a little shout out to Wes Jackson. And then the beats came through, and in this sort of use of the diptych, there's a sort of interesting way that you think about the textures of the images to have sort of two maybe opposing contradictory images together that sort of build and create our thinking around the space. So it's an image from a beat, poet, and then some hides. I think my timer is no longer visible, but I bet it's 10 minutes, so I'll try to hurry up. Yes, okay. So more images. We're almost done. And then finally, the end matter. The end part of a book tends to include a glossary, bibliography, and index, and that I have not done yet. Screen capture of my computer. That will happen next. I started to make a typeface that was influenced by the night sky and all the Skyfinders, and that's sort of a subnote. So a lot of times the end of the book talks about notes on the type, so that's in my end matter. And another kind of thing that I've been working on that came out of this residency, influenced by the midnight sky. So that's it. Thank you all.
Veronica.
There you go. Hi, my name is Veronica and Salinas. I'm an interdisciplinary artist based in Chicago right now, originally from Texas. And my creative research engages the field of sound, landscape studies, ecology, writing, performance, and the archive. And my work in sound focuses on aspects of acoustic ecology, text scores, sound walks, field recording, listening practices, spatial audio, improvisation, and performance. I went to school in Chicago at the School of the Art Institute for Sound, and I have studied at Deep Listening at the Center for Deep Listening at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Let's see. What I'll mostly, there we go, be talking about today is my work in sound practices, which was the work that I did mostly during my time here at the Tallgrass residency. And a lot of that sound practices, it's a new field. So if you don't know anything about sound, it's okay, and it involves a lot of listening, a lot of close, attentive listening, yeah, my interest in sound has roots in storytelling and in poetry, and in understanding the power and poetics of a space. So applying to this residency was one of the, it just seemed to align with everything that I was interested in. Let's see, and I guess my work in the past few years post-pandemic has also been about connection as a means to understand our environment and each other, listening as social practice. A lot of the times we're in a space together and we're hearing each other, but are we really listening? Are we interpreting maybe gestures or something that maybe speaks to something else? This is a quote from wonderful sound artist and composer Pauline Oliveros about walking. Take a walk at night. Walk so silently that the bottoms of your feet become ears. So it's about walking and listening, and the idea of very slow walking and taking in slow time and what that means to experience slow time, because I forget, maybe it was David. One of the artists was saying that this residency was about time. And it is, it goes by very quickly, so it can be fast and slow at the same time. So how many of you have ever been on a sound walk or heard of the term sound walks? Sound walk. Amazing. Okay, good. Yes, so for those of you who don't know, a sound walk is an invitation to slow down, to listen, to sense. It is a lesson in observation and slow looking, slow listening, and it can also be a creative excursion. According to sound artist and composer Hildegard Westerkamp, a walk or any excursion whose main purpose is listening to the environment. It is exposing our ears to every sound around us. Its focus is to rediscover and reactivate our sense of listening with an environment. So I kind of wanted to talk about process, since I feel like listening and sound is kind of a new world. And so how do we listen? I'm interested in the sound sense as a way of looking and listening deeper, of processing and understanding. And so my time here at Matfield Green was a lot of walking the prairie. I spent a lot of time at the Southwind Trail, and my main, event for the residency was leading a sound walk through the Southwind Trail. But back to listening. My work in deep listening is a way of becoming attuned to the environment, to listening and connecting through sound, and to this perception of our bodies in a space. We hear, but where is our attention focused? Listening is focused attention. It's an active state of noticing sounds around you. So, since maybe we're all listening to my voice, let's do a quick listening meditation together. So I want you to relax your body. If you're sitting, maybe sit with both feet on the ground. And go ahead and you can either close your eyes or have a soft gaze. You can look at the floor, you can look at your shoes, you can just try to find your center. And so, once you find your center, go ahead and take a deep breath in, deep breath out. And go ahead and try to make the next deep breath in and out audible. So big deep breath in, and deep breath out. And try to focus on that sound of your breath. So we'll do it one more time. Deep breath in, and deep breath out. And then when you're ready, feel free to come back to the self. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the room. And now you're hearing the sound of the train. So that little exercise is a way that I like to ground myself and prepare myself for listening to a space like the prairie. And so walking and listening, these are both relational interactions. Walking is a motivating factor. Every walk has a different motivation, so it depends on the context, the intention, the situation. You can be walking, just for leisurely purposes or wellness, or with a destination in mind. It can be a pilgrimage, a march, something more political, or a procession. And speaking of processions, once it becomes 4 o'clock, I'm gonna lead everyone out on a little procession out to the front of the school. So it'll be a bit of a soft parade. I have a very few sounding shakers and instruments that I can hand out, but you can use your voice. I don't know, you can move, feel free to do whatever to express yourself. So we will do that, and it is part of the relational interaction, I think, to a place, and a place like Matfield's Grain. It feels very special here. Let's see. There's a couple of tools for a sound walk that I wanted to share. So you can take these are kind of takeaways, and my table is actually in the back corner, and I have a takeaway that is a text score for you to do at your leisure. A couple of tools for sound walks is a sound map. You can map sounds that you hear within a place. It can be a sketch that represents the source of the sound, and some keys might be to note direction, location, time, because within different time frames, you have different, natural sounds coming out of both natural and unnatural human-made sounds. Kind of something like this, where you kind of are the center of the sound sources. Another tool is a score, which I have done in the back table, and they're actually postcards, so feel free to take one, they're free. Text scores are written actions, instructional texts, or graphic notations to help activate a walk or observe an environment or be present in a public environment. The score that I did is a text score. It's also a graphic score, I guess it could be both. But it is for prairie listening. The score instructs you to look and listen, to focus your attention on the sounds coming from each direction. I think direction is super important to listening because in some ways I feel like it's orienting yourself to the space. And in this case, we're looking at space in the cardinal directions and also looking and listening in between, which are can be, sounds that are high, sounds that are low, sounds that are in between north and west or whatever. And now, let's see. And so this is a photo of the sound walk that I did in the Southwind portion of the prairie. Some of you attended, which was really great, and we had a lot of fun. We did a few creative exercises along the walk, which included the grounding exercises that I led you on, and a few others. Let's see. And part of the walk included this idea of acoustic listening, which is a portmanteau of the words acoustic and scenic, which is the concept of experiencing sonic events characterizing a landscape. And I feel like the Tallgrass Prairie was so just scenic, but during my residency, which was in July, it was just bursting with sound from the birds, from the grasses, from the cicadas in the trees, the cottonwoods. If you haven't been to the Southwind Trail, I'm trying to sell you on it. It's really, really great. And also during my time here, I was able to experience this really wonderful workshop with some ecologists from Kansas State University. Dr. Alice Boyle had an amazing team of folks out. I'm not sure if they're here today. They said that they were going to come. But yeah, we went to a few different sites where they're conducting some research. This was one of them. And I also work with field recording, so taking recordings of sounds within the environment. And so I composed a sound piece as a result of the spaces that they kind of took me to. And you can hear that on the headphones over there. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. I'm not sure I know how this works. Is that forward? No. Back? Forward? Forward. Got it. Oh, okay. Thank you. I was like, this is all backwards. Okay. Well, hi. My name is Chris or Christopher Williams, whichever rolls off your tongue easier. I'm an interdisciplinary artist, mostly working within ceramics, but I've done a few residencies now that don't have like clay facilities, and I find those times, like Tallgrass, to be times to really just like explore my practice beyond the confines of a medium. And so I wanted to start here. My journey in Tallgrass has really been like one of it's been a journey of experience and transition. Going through a lot of different things in my life, and I came to Tallgrass right after I moved to Chicago. I moved to Chicago, and 1 week later I drove 10 hours to get to Tallgrass, and it was like quite the time going from the big city into these like small rural towns. But this is a really time. I'm posting this poem from this poet Chen Chen, who I immediately started reading when I got here. And this poem, my experience at Tallgrass is really this kind of diaspora of two different things, of reading these love poems in the morning that really seemingly have nothing to do with like ecology or art or nature, and then hiking for 4 to 5 hours every day and then coming back and drawing. So this is Chen Chen's book that I was reading, and this is another poem that really struck me, I Love You to the Moon. And you can read these on your own, but kind of mixing these two experiences and sitting in the sun and sweating and getting like all types of bug bites, I really kind of felt this feeling of floating and collapsing, like I was running away or like I was running towards something. And I started my time here by going back and just starting with the history of this place. I've spent the last 3 years in Nebraska, and so also part of the prairie ecosystem, but a different part of the prairie. And I wanted to kind of really understand what this environment was about. And I got really fascinated with seed dispersal and just kind of the writing and the language that we use to describe our environment. And so in here, you can't really see it very well, but one of the ways of seed dispersal is seeds dispersed by wind often have fine hairs, fluff, or specialized wings to float and whirl and fly. So then over here, I have these milkweed seeds that have butterfly wings strapped to them so that they can fly and disperse themselves. And then I was reading about the prairie and indigenous language to describe the prairie, and I got really captured by this language of calling the wildfires fire bison or the red bison. And that really kind of struck me because it's, 9 or 10 years ago, the bison got reintroduced into the Tallgrass Prairie Reserve as like free roaming bison, and these are these animals that are kind of containing or softening the land with their bodies, but then you have the wildfire at the same time. These kind of knowable, uncontrollable forces, you're being warned against wildfires, you're being warned against the bison, keep your distance and all those things, but at the same time they're kind of containing and maintaining the land in their own way, in a way that we kind of follow and learn from. My practice itself has been centered in queer and feminist ecological practices. And for me, that really just means like how I reimagine my own belonging in a space, in the space that I occupy. For a long time growing up, the way that I was raised, I was led to believe that I didn't really belong in the world or didn't have a place in the world. And so kind of recentering myself when I come to a space and imagining a future that is unimaginable or beyond what's reasonable is a way for me to kind of find my center. This image itself is from Scott Archer, who studies queer prairie futures and queer ecological practices in Canada, specifically in the Aspenland ecoregion. And it's not a practice of fixing something or creating new systems of that kind of not heal, but we're not really trying to fix or correct a mistake, but rather understanding the mistakes that we've made to damage the land are now a part of the land forever and something that we harness and accept and move forward with. And that's like kind of what the idea is here. And so, you have these free roaming bison creating these wallow pits and interjected with tanks and cars and destruction with these prairie flowers intermingled in between. And I see a lot of this already in the design of the Tallgrass Prairie Reserve, which is kind of really magical. It's one of these things that is like it's accessible and it's something that I wanted to find while I was here. Let's see. I got really captured by like how the inhabitants of the land create their own landmarks, create their own kind of fascinations and trails for themselves, but also these trails that we're like meant to follow. And so then here I'm drawing these two different types of bison. This is a front and back drawing that's over there under the basketball hoop. And these two different types of wallow pits, one that's collecting water, and then one that this butterfly bison is kind of dancing around and resting in. I expected in this place, in this time of transition, to find an answer or find a direction, and I find myself like more and more just kind of like, I don't know what to do, I don't know where I'm supposed to be or who I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to be. Like I have all of these questions that seem unanswerable, and I came here kind of not expecting an answer, but also like seeking an answer within all of that. I picked my paths every day based on intuition and also based on which way the bison would let me go. Because they have lots of options to block you on the trails. And for a long time, I really wanted to come here and find my own direction, but then I was just kind of wandering lost in the wilderness and getting to these places and finding these creatures that were maybe sending me messages and started to kind of become their own characters within my drawings. And so you have like the cattle heron here, these claws, these flowers with the landscape of these dramatized mountains that we don't actually see, and mountains instead of these like flint hills, the rolling hills, these things that it looks almost flat from a distance, but then you're in the path and it really becomes its own experience of getting lost and not finding your way. I made this booklet, we were talking about sounds, and I was, we were walking the prairie, listening to cicadas, and I got like really captured by the grasshoppers, just all over, flooding the prairie, flooding the land, kind of whacking me as I'm walking around. And I made this booklet and I realized how difficult of a subject grasshoppers can be. But what it led me to instead was, as they were kind of like landing on me and I'm like shaking them off or walking with them for a long time, and they became my like travel companions. They're like resting on my shoulder bag or on my shoes. I started thinking about like the things that we like strap to ourselves as a form of like protection, but also as a form of connection. So what are we attaching ourselves? So that's kind of also where the butterfly wings came from too. So I'm kind of drawing these like loose, unconnected straps and shoelaces, which have started to like really heavily feature come into my drawings. And then I came to the Wichita Botanical Garden. There's this amazing unicorn who's being like taken care of by this rat, this kind of like rat shining the unicorn horn. And this really started to become a character of itself for me too, this idea of the horn of the unicorn is what makes the unicorn special, but like really who asked the unicorn and why is it so, like why is it so special and did it ever want to be? Why is it this kind of like destination or this thing that people are seeking out? And I gave this unicorn horn to this bird at the same idea of this bird that is has flight, the power of flight, and can move around, is free to do whatever it wants, free as a bird. And all of us that don't have that ability, we dream and we want this power of the bird. But here I have this like bird that is burdened by other people's desires, kind of irritated or frustrated or kind of turning its back, showing its butt to all of the kind of desires that are being willed upon it. So I'm doing a hard shift here to the event that we did while I was here, kind of this paper making narrative flower event, and it was really exciting. It was like, it's simple,
mechanics, just gluing paper to each other. But it was a really wonderful experience to see how everyone kind of comes to the space and interprets their own narratives within a simple prompt. Whether it was like some people were making replicas of native flowers and challenging us to identify those flowers, to which I always got wrong, or people making these like alien hybrid monsters. And these are some stop motion animations that we made. Okay. Well, you can all just imagine they're moving and dancing and swaying. And at the end of the workshop, we created these stop motion animations to kind of give their own life and personality to these flowers, so that they're not just like these paper flowers that you make and you keep and you hold on to because of a special moment, but also something that is animated and creates its own life. And there's another one, and another one that's blowing in the wind. Really great. But during the workshop, Kelly actually said something really, something that really stuck with me about the materials that we were using. It was just like Crayola, Elmer's glue, newsprint, newspaper, and about the simplicity of the materials being something that is freeing, that you're allowed to kind of make mistakes or make choices that you normally maybe wouldn't or be afraid to. But because the materials are so simple, there isn't that like fear of judgment or fear of getting something wrong. That really stuck with me because in my own practice, I use a lot of reclaimed material or material that's getting thrown out, or just like simple materials like Crayola products, washable markers, Elmer's glue, these jumbo crayons that my friend got me for graduation gift. That's been amazing. And that idea that the materials and the ideas that we have can be so freeing, and that's what creates kind of an imagining a future that is freeing, that is different and maybe not as complicated. In a lot of ways, the future that we have held on to for so long and that we look up to and that we want are things that are maybe impossible now. And we're at a time, and I think like many of us are talking about this up here on the stage today, is we're looking for a different future. And what we're doing at Tallgrass, I think, is finding different possibilities and different ways of exploring that future and exploring what that future might look like. As I said, I kind of came here to recalibrate and find a direction. I left not finding that at all. But what I did get instead during my long, sweaty hikes in the reserve, surrounded by clouds and endless prairie. And there was one day that I was really, really far out on a trail. Could not tell you what trail I was on. And I was kind of squatting and resting by this trailhead rock, which this is my kind of replica of, which is over there. And like looking at the rock and looking at my map and just kind of getting my bearings, and this ranger comes up in his ATV with some kids in the back, and he was like, "Wow, you're really out here in the middle of nowhere." I was like, "Wow, that's really cool that you say that, because I don't know where I am." And he was like, "Well, how far are you going? Thank God I have this ATV to get me back." And I was like, should I be heading back? Like, what's going on? And I realized that like that is kind of my journey here, and that's like my journey going forward is, we talk about these moments that are uncomfortable or are unfortunate, and sometimes all we want to do is move past them and get out of them as quickly as possible. But other times it's really important to like really sit in that feeling and sink down into that understanding, and that's kind of the work that I made while here, and the work that I've been making now has been really exploring that like loss of direction without a compass, without reading a map, not following a formula, not really understanding where I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to go to, and I find myself being just this creature of strapping a unicorn horn to myself, strapping butterfly wings to myself, and trying to find a path that maybe doesn't make as much sense. And yeah, thank you.
Gumption. Hair slicked back, hard water. I have been a weather vane for most of this. Small aluminum rooster spinning, secret Stetson cologne I put back with my father's things. What if there is no wind? What if there is no wind? Thanks for sitting through these talks, and I've learned so much. I don't have slides for you because I'm a poet, and I don't have anything for you to look at. But I'm really grateful to be here. You see, I've got some broadsides in the back, and I brought a saddle that used to be my grandpa's, and he gave it to me as a kid. And I stamped some poems onto it. So I grew up in southeast Kansas, just a few hours from here, where the prairie kind of melts into the Ozark Plateau. And even though the ecosystem is familiar, it's very different here. I am the first person in my family to ever go to college, and from a long line of farmers, and being an artist seemed something that was just completely implausible to me. And I grew up outside of a town that's about twice the size as Matfield Green, and so I didn't know that something like this was possible, and I think it's really incredible. During my time as an artist in residence, I believe I was the last artist just because I had top surgery in the middle of the summer in June, and I needed 12 weeks to be able to move again. And so this residency was actually one of my first forays back into the world and the body I felt at home in. And I was getting up in the mornings and doing some of my physical therapy and just learning how to use my arms and really stretch and feel like myself. And it was pretty incredible because a lot of my work, I'm not gonna lie, in the evenings when I was back at Matfield Station, my dissertation was due on October 1st, so I was every night just feverishly working on that. But I've done a lot of work interviewing gay rodeo elders who were putting on the rodeos here in Kansas and in Missouri and Oklahoma in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. And my debut book this fall called Sissy, which is also my dissertation, features a lot of that work, but I was interested in exploring something I had started doing, which is thinking about trans eco-poetics with the native plants of this ecoregion. And I remember being at the Kansas Book Festival when I first started doing this kind of writing, and I was talking with the poet Megan Kaminsky about this Humanities Kansas chapbook we had put together responding to plants in the region. And I said something about how I think that locust trees are trans and that I wouldn't be taking any questions. And this older farmer in the audience raised his hand and he said, I don't have a question, more of a comment, and I'm just like, shit, what's he gonna say? And he said, actually, ginkgo trees are trans too, and explained to me how they can just change their gender like later in their life as a tree. And he was so excited about it, and then I wanted to start learning more about plants and reproduction, and I did a lot of that work here, learning just about, and it's been mentioned in some previous artist talks today, about the way that the grasses here are pollinated by the wind. The wind carries the seeds, and I think it's really incredible. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna finish out with 3 poems that I wrote in my time here that are part of a crown of sonnets that are called Notes on Transness and Locust Trees. Before I could say my name for you, I split a milkweed pod down the seam, fat with seeds laid down, sequins on the bodice of a dress when the seamstress wasn't skimping. Floss slicked back and a little like mother of pearl in the light, my name for you. I snap a picture of my hand, gently cradling the seed pod covered in sticky white sap. For you, texting, this is tea girl come. If a plant has sex with the wind, how can we be unnatural? How can we be unnatural? Not a question I need to ask you. I'm a poet, not an ecologist, but my understanding of prairie grasses is that they trust the wind to carry their pollen. They're not showy like a dog rose, but a pollinator could seek them out. Filaments, asexual rhizomes, nodes, lateral spread. Which one of us is wind? Not a question I need to ask you either. This understanding, rhizome grown between 2 fence posts. What wood is that? An indicator species, yes, but indicating what? What wood? Hedge posts, I think, pulled close by barbed wire, which I'm now obsessed with and collect the unknown number of prototypes we designed to keep what's ours, ours. And I'm confused about who owns what. I get to pick up my hormones monthly with the express written permission of strangers. What they don't know about. Thank you.